It was a hot summer day, the kind where the air feels thick and heavy, almost like an invisible weight pressing down on your shoulders. My family had left for a weekend trip, something rare for us since my dad, the pastor of a small-town church, hardly ever took time off from his responsibilities with the congregation. For the first time in a long while, I was completely alone. My name is Caleb, I'm 22, and I'm a pastor's son. I grew up surrounded by sermons as the soundtrack of my life, hymns filling our Sundays, and the ever-watchful eyes of the congregation tracking my every move. As the oldest child of a church leader, I was expected to be a role model, obedient, pure, and faithful. On the outside, I looked like the perfect young man, dedicated, respectful, dutiful. But inside, I felt something I could never suppress. My attraction to other men burned like a quiet flame, a powerful force that consumed me, no matter how hard I tried to deny it. From an early age, I was taught in church that those feelings were wrong, sinful. Bible verses were recited endlessly to remind me of that, as if they could reshape my heart through sheer repetition. Every time my heart raced for someone of the same sex, I felt dirty, tainted. Every sermon on purity hit me like a poisoned arrow, and over time, the weight of guilt pushed me further and further away. I stopped attending services, distanced myself from the people I cared about most, and most of all from myself. That day, as I wandered through the house lost in my thoughts, I heard a knock at the door. It was him, my neighbor Adrian. Adrian was 26, an engineer, and he seemed to carry the weight of the world in his deep green eyes. He had always been a mystery to me. There was something about his calm demeanor, the way he moved through life with quiet confidence that fascinated me. Adrian seemed to know something I didn't, as if he'd found a kind of freedom that felt completely out of reach for me. Every time I saw him, I felt a mix of admiration and fear. He was holding a wrench in one hand, a casual smile on his face. "Hey, Caleb, I heard your family's out of town. Need help with anything? I noticed your garage gate's been acting up." I tried to hide my nerves, clinging to the mask I'd worn for so long. "Oh no, it's fine, everything's good." He tilted his head slightly, the smile on his face shifting into something curious. "Come on. It'll be quick, I promise." Before I could respond, he was already in the garage, fiddling with the bolts on the gate. I stood there for a moment, unsure if I should follow him or retreat inside. Something about his presence made me uneasy, yet at the same time, I felt an irresistible pull toward him. Eventually, I decided to follow. As Adrian worked, we started talking. He was the kind of person who could make anyone open up without even trying. He told me about his life, his choices, how he had stopped trying to please everyone else and focused on what truly made him happy. Every word he said seemed to touch a part of me that I'd been trying to hide. "What about you, Caleb?" he asked, pausing from his work to look at me. "Are you happy with the life you're living?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. Happy? I had never really thought about it. My automatic response came out before I could stop it. "Yeah, sure, everything's fine." He gave me a sideways smile like he didn't believe me. Sometimes we convince ourselves of things that aren't really true, you know? My face flushed with heat. Before I could think of a reply, I turned back toward the house, but he followed me. "Mind if I grab a glass of water?" he asked casually. I nodded, trying to keep my composure. In the kitchen, as I filled a glass, I noticed he was standing closer to me than I expected. When I turned to hand him the water, our hands touched, and that small contact felt like an electric shock. My heart pounded, and the air in the room seemed to vanish. He didn't pull his hand away. For a moment, we just stood there, frozen. Then he broke the silence. "Caleb." His voice was soft, almost a whisper, but it carried a weight that made it impossible to ignore. "You don't have to live your life trying to be what other people expect." I tried to step back, but he moved closer, his eyes locked on mine, as if he could see every hidden part of me. "Why are you hiding so much?" he asked. I don't know what you're talking about," I lied, my voice trembling. Adrian smiled gently, but didn't back away. "I think you do. You can run from everyone else, Caleb, but you can't run from yourself." And in that moment, something inside me broke. Years of repression, fear, and pretending to be someone else. It all crumbled. Adrian leaned in, and when his lips met mine, I felt something I had never felt before. Peace. It wasn't wrong, it wasn't dirty, it was real. Our kiss started out slow, as if we were testing the boundaries of the moment, but it quickly became something more. It was as though every chain that had held me down finally shattered, and for the first time, I could breathe. The warmth of his body, the way his lips moved against mine. It was all so new, yet it felt so right. Adrian's hands found my waist, pulling me closer. I didn't know what to do, but for the first time, I stopped thinking. I just let myself feel. It was like a massive weight had been lifted off my shoulders, and all the doubts, all the voices of guilt and judgment were silenced. When we finally pulled apart, he looked into my eyes, a soft smile spreading across his face. "See? It's not the end of the world," he said, his tone light, with just a hint of teasing. I laughed nervously, still feeling the rush of everything that had just happened. I don't know how to deal with this," I admitted. He reached out and touched my face, his gaze steady and full of patience. "You don't need to have all the answers right now. Just take it one step at a time. Nobody expects you to know everything, Caleb. Not even you should." We moved to the couch, and for the first time in as long as I could remember, I didn't feel judged or pressured. The conversation flowed naturally, easy and honest. Adrian started opening up about his own journey, sharing how he had grown up in an environment that didn't accept who he truly was. He told me about the fear he felt when he finally decided to come out, but also about the overwhelming freedom that came after. "I know it's not easy," he said gently, "but Caleb, you deserve to be happy. No matter what anyone else thinks or says, you are enough exactly as you are." His words resonated deep within me, breaking through years of doubt and insecurity. For the first time, I allowed myself to imagine a future where I wasn't hiding anymore, a future where I could just be myself without fear. We stayed like that for hours, talking, laughing, and getting to know each other in ways I'd never allowed before. Adrian didn't push me or rush me into anything. He just stayed there, present, showing me that I could exist without shame, without guilt. As night fell, we lay side by side on the couch, a comfortable silence settling between us. He ran his fingers gently through my hair while I stared at the ceiling, still trying to process everything that had happened. "Do you think I'll be able to do this?" I asked, my voice quiet, almost a whisper. "Do what?" he replied. "Live like this, be as me." Adrian smiled, his hand stilling in my hair, his touch tender but sure. "Of course you will. It's going to be hard at first, but you've got something most people don't: courage. You've already taken the first step, Caleb, and I'll be here whenever you need me." I turned to look at him, and before I could stop them, tears started streaming down my face. They weren't tears of sadness, but of relief, of gratitude. He reached out, wiping one away with his thumb, and in that moment, I realized I wasn't alone anymore. That night, something inside me changed. For the first time, I began to accept myself. It wasn't a complete transformation, but it was a start. Adrian wasn't just my neighbor. He was the catalyst for something much bigger: my freedom. As I closed my eyes, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: peace. For the first time, I wasn't weighed down by fear or guilt. I was simply me, and that was enough. If you've ever felt the heavy burden of hiding who you truly are, know that you're not alone. Accepting yourself is the first step toward freedom. The journey might be long and challenging, but every step is worth it. Remember, you are enough. Be brave, be free, be you.